The cold wind cut through my thin tunic as I stared at the grand gates of the Gale estate. In a world where nobility and birthright dictated everything, being the second son was a curse. My older brother received the inheritance, the praise, and the legendary family training. For me, there were only the scraps from the table and the cold glances of my father. The Gale family had survived for generations by ruthlessly trimming away their weakest branches. My true nightmare began on my 18th birthday, when the official decree was placed in my hands. I was chosen to lead the colonizing mission to the infamous floating island of the frontier. Everyone knew that the frontier island was nothing more than a floating mass of death and dark mist. No explorer had ever returned alive from those jagged, monster-infested shores. My father didn't care about my survival. He simply wanted a convenient way to dispose of me. Within 3 days, I was stripped of my noble garments and loaded onto a decrepit transport vessel. The voyage across the sky sea was a blur of nausea and terrifying, distant roars. As the ship approached the floating island, the sky turned a deep, unnatural shade of violet. Without warning, the sailors threw my meager supplies onto the rocky dock and pushed me off. I watched in absolute horror as the transport vessel turned around and vanished into the upper clouds. I was completely alone, abandoned in a place where only death thrived. Gripping my rusted steel longsword, I walked slowly away from the cliff edge. The dark mist seemed to have a life of its own, swirling around my ankles like cold tendrils. A sudden sharp cracking sound from the bushes made my heart skip a beat. From the deep shadows emerged a skeletal warrior, its eyes burning with a cruel crimson fire. I scrambled backward, my boots slipping on the loose, damp stones. The skeleton lunged forward with terrifying speed, thrusting its rusted spear straight at my chest. Adrenaline surged through my veins as I swung my longsword with all my remaining strength. My blade clashed against the skeleton's arm bone, sending sharp vibrations up my arms. The force of the impact threw me to the ground, scraping my palms against the jagged rocks. The monster raised its spear once more, standing directly over my defenseless body. I refused to die like a dog in this forgotten, wretched place. Kicking out with my left leg, I struck the skeleton's fragile knee joint with perfect precision. With a loud crack, the creature's leg shattered, causing it to fall heavily onto its side. Seizing the brief window of opportunity, I lunged forward and drove my sword directly into its glowing skull. The red fire in its eyes flickered violently before fading into absolute darkness. Suddenly, a strange, ethereal, translucent blue screen materialized right in front of my face. A robotic, echoing voice resonated directly inside my mind. Universal Enhancement System successfully awakened, the mysterious interface displayed in bold letters. Undead skeleton target detected. Would you like to absorb its latent energy? Without a moment of hesitation, I reached out my bloodied hand and tapped the confirmation button. Instantly, swirling strands of vibrant green energy rose from the shattered bones on the ground. The green skeletal energy flowed directly into my chest, filling my body with a profound, searing warmth. My muscles tightened, my fatigue vanished entirely, and my senses became sharper than ever before. The system screen updated rapidly, showing a substantial increase in my core physical attributes. With this incredible power, I no longer had to accept my fate as a discarded exile. I could use this endless supply of skeletons to build my very own domain right here in the frontier. But my grand ambitions would mean nothing if I couldn't secure resources and reliable allies back home first. To build my kingdom of Babylon, I needed to play the long game and manipulate my family's greed. Just as I began planning my return, a massive, deep tremor shook the entire floating island. From the depths of the newly formed rift, dozens of glowing red eyes began to pierce through the thick, dark mist. A deafening collective screech echoed from below, signaling the arrival of something far worse than a single skeleton. The echoing screeches of the dark island faded into memory as Alan focused on the immediate political battlefield of his family estate. To survive the upcoming banishment to the frontier, he needed more than just his awakening system. He needed tangible assets. He marched directly into the main council chamber where his family members gathered to discuss his fate. His arrogant elder brother looked up from the long polished table with a sneer of pure disdain. The family patriarch sat at the head of the table, his cold eyes offering no warmth to his second-born son. Alan did not flinch under their collective gaze, stepping forward with an air of absolute composure. He presented a falsified report regarding the island exploration, deliberately exaggerating the immediate dangers to mask his own gains. Seeing his brother's eyes widen with subtle fear of the dark mist, Alan knew his psychological trap was working perfectly. Alan requested a baseline compensation package in exchange for accepting the dangerous exile without protest. The patriarch hesitated, weighing the cost of funding this outcast against the peace of securing the family succession. Alan subtly leaked a tiny fraction of his newly acquired system pressure, letting the room temperature drop. Sensing the unexpected strength from the supposed failure, the family elders quickly agreed to his terms to remove him swiftly. Heavy iron-bound chests filled with glittering gold coins were dragged into the courtyard soon after. Gold was vital, but human capital was far more valuable for establishing his intended domain. He walked toward the servant quarters, searching for specific individuals who possessed hidden potential or loyalty. Thomas, an aging but deeply knowledgeable veteran warrior reduced to stable duties, was his first target. Alan approached the old soldier, offering him a chance to reclaim his honor in a new land. Thomas looked into Alan's eyes, seeing a fierce fire that reminded him of true kings. Next was Caroline, a brilliant young maid whose sharp wit and logistical talents were wasted on cleaning floors. Alan intercepted her, promising her a position of high authority over his future treasury rather than a life of servitude. Caroline agreed without hesitation, her eyes flashing with a dormant ambition that Alan found highly satisfactory. With his core inner circle secured, Alan finalized his exit strategy from the family lands. He knew that once they crossed the border, the law of the kingdom would no longer protect them. At dawn, a modest convoy consisting of 3 heavily laden wagons rolled out of the estate gates. Alan rode at the front on a sturdy black stallion, his gaze locked firmly on the distant horizon. Behind him, Thomas rode with the alert posture of an active vanguard soldier, scouting the surrounding tree lines. Caroline sat inside the lead wagon, checking the inventory ledgers repeatedly to ensure every piece of gold was accounted for. Several days of travel passed quickly as the lush green landscape slowly gave way to dry, cracked earth. The majestic stone watchtowers of the kingdom soon appeared, marking the edge of civilization. The border guards opened the heavy iron gates with mocking laughter, viewing the convoy as dead men walking. Alan ignored their jeers entirely, leading his followers past the threshold into the lawless lands. Before them stretched the infinite expanse of the lawless desert of death, an ocean of shifting golden sands. The scorching heat hit them immediately like a physical wall, forcing everyone to cover their faces with cloaks. Alan opened his mental system interface, observing his current energy reserves and domain maps. The coordinates for the location that would become Babylon were already locked into his mind. Thomas guided the horses carefully, ensuring the wooden wagon wheels did not get hopelessly trapped in the soft sand. Caroline distributed water rations systematically, managing their most precious resource with extreme care. As night began to descend over the dunes, the temperature plummeted drastically into a freezing chill. They set up a temporary camp nestled in the valley between 2 massive protective sand dunes. Suddenly, the horses began to kick violently and whine in terror as the sand around the camp started to shift rhythmically. Caroline scrambled backward into the wagon as a massive, dark silhouette began rising slowly out of the deep sand grains. A pair of glowing red eyes snapped open within the darkness of the emerging creature, locking directly onto their position. The glowing red eyes within the darkness widened as the massive desert creature stepped fully into the moonlight. Alan didn't flinch as he activated the universal enhancement system to assess the immediate threat. A skeletal sand wolf lunged forward, its bony joints clicking sharply against the cold desert terrain. With a single swift strike of his enhanced sword, Alan severed the creature's neck cleanly. The system instantly chimed, notifying him of the successful absorption of skeletal energy. Thomas let out a tense breath, slowly lowering his defensive shield as the immediate danger passed. Caroline remained huddled near the carriage door, her hands trembling as she clutched a woolen shawl. Alan instructed his small convoy to move forward before the smell of blood attracted more predators. The horses strained against their harnesses as the heavy wheels churned through the deep sands. As the golden sun broke over the horizon, the harsh landscape revealed its true, unforgiving scale. Alan reviewed his updated status panel, noticing a significant increase in his physical attributes. The Desert of Death was known as a lawless wasteland where only the strong survived. Suddenly, Thomas called out from the driver's seat, pointing toward a thick cloud of dust ahead. Alan peered out and spotted a large, heavily guarded caravan moving along the trade route. The approaching group flew the elaborate silk banners of a high-ranking noble family. Something about their formation felt deeply wrong to Alan's trained noble eye. He noticed the guards were wearing expensive armor, yet they marched with a sloppy, unrefined gait. True elite knights would never allow their posture to sag so completely during a desert patrol. Alan quietly activated his system's scanning function to investigate the hidden details of the caravan. The system interface immediately highlighted several structural anomalies within the luxurious carriages. Inside those hidden compartments, Alan saw the faint magical signatures of multiple restrained captives. It became clear that this was not a noble entourage, but a heavily armed human trafficking ring. As the two groups drew closer, the leader of the fake nobles locked his eyes onto Caroline. The man licked his dry lips, clearly evaluating Caroline's high market value as a captive. Caroline felt the man's malicious gaze and instinctively shrank back behind Thomas's large frame. The caravan leader raised his hand, commanding his armed thugs to surround Alan's small convoy. "Hand over the blonde girl and your gold and we might let you cross this desert alive," the leader sneered. Alan stepped out of his carriage slowly, his demeanor completely unbothered by the overwhelming numbers. "You wear the crest of the House of Valois, yet you don't even know the proper hand salute for their guards," Alan noted. The leader's smile vanished instantly, replaced by a look of sudden panic at being exposed. Realizing their cover was blown, the bandits surged forward with weapons raised to silence the witnesses. Alan unleashed his stored skeletal energy, causing a wave of emerald pressure to blast outward. The charging bandits were thrown backward violently, their weapons scattering across the dunes. The leader watched in absolute horror as his entire elite force was dismantled within seconds. Alan walked toward the trembling leader, the tip of his glowing sword dragging lightly in the sand.
"Wait, spare me. I will tell you who funds our entire operation," the leader begged, raising his hands.
Before the man could speak another word, a heavy black arrow pierced through his chest from afar. Alan spun around instantly, looking toward the high rocky ridges surrounding the valley. The dead leader's body collapsed onto the sand, leaving the true mastermind behind the ambush completely unknown. High on the ridgeline, a massive silhouette of an armored knight stood against the moon, holding a longbow. The massive silhouette of the armored knight slowly lowered his longbow as Alan raised a hand to signal his peaceful intentions. Recognizing the insignia of Babylon on the traveler's cloaks, the vanguard scout stepped down from the rocky ridge to welcome his lord home. Alan looked back at the long line of rescued captives who gazed upon the distant oasis lights with tears of hope in their eyes. With a flick of his reins, Alan led the massive caravan through the outer wooden palisades of his rapidly expanding desert domain. Caroline ran forward to guide the exhausted refugees toward the temporary shelter tents erected near the main square. Thomas immediately began organizing the distribution of fresh water and warm bread to the grateful newcomers. Alan opened his glowing blue system interface to review the current population count and resource levels of Babylon. The system chime rang out loudly, confirming that the successful integration of 50 new citizens had unlocked a settlement milestone. Approaching the central stone well, Alan prepared to deploy his accumulated skeletal energy for a critical infrastructure upgrade. Emerald green energy surged from his fingertips into the deep abyss of the well, causing the ground to vibrate gently. Crystal clear water burst upward from the depths, transforming the dry well into a magnificent, self-sustaining magical spring. Citizens cheered loudly as irrigation channels automatically filled with pure, life-giving water across the arid fields. Next, Alan walked toward the western perimeter where a small grove of withered fire date trees stood in the dry sand. He selected the agricultural upgrade option from his universal enhancement system, targeting the specialized desert flora. Instantly, the roots of the fire date trees expanded deep into the earth, absorbing the newly unleashed underground waters. Crimson leaves sprouted rapidly from the branches, and heavy clusters of glowing orange fire dates materialized within seconds. These upgraded fire dates provided immense nutritional value and possessed mild healing properties suitable for long journeys. To establish a self-sustaining economy, Alan realized Babylon needed a steady influx of currency beyond mere survival resources. He decided to establish a regional commission guild that would reward nomadic traders and mercenaries for bringing rare goods to Babylon. The very next morning, construction workers hammered together a massive, double-story guild hall in the center of the trading district. Above the main entrance, a beautifully carved wooden sign was hung, bearing the name of the Babylon Commission House. Inside, a massive wooden board was erected, covered in parchment listings for monster hunting, mineral collection, and escort duties. Alan offered payments in pure gold coins and high-grade fire dates, an irresistible offer for any weary desert traveler.
Word of the incredibly high rewards spread like wildfire across the neighboring lawless territories and desert outposts.
Within a single week, the first major caravan of independent merchant groups arrived at Babylon's gates to trade. The once quiet desert outpost quickly transformed into a bustling trading hub filled with the sounds of bartering and laughter. To ensure absolute security within his domain, Alan stationed his newly trained skeletal knights at key checkpoints around the market. Outlaws and thieves who entered the city quickly realized that any violation of Babylon's laws would result in swift execution. Finding true safety and prosperity under Alan's rule, many visiting merchants decided to buy property and settle down permanently. The universal enhancement system chimed continuously, granting Alan massive amounts of domain points as the settlement's wealth grew.
With his domain secure, Alan finalized plans to expand Babylon's borders outward, reclaiming more of the dangerous frontier island.
Caroline approached the table and presented a detailed report showing that poverty and hunger had been completely eliminated from the domain. Thomas reported that the surrounding desert tribes had officially sent emissaries seeking alliances and trade agreements with Babylon. The existential threat of being sent to die on this floating island had been utterly shattered by Alan's strategic brilliance. No longer a weak second son exiled by a corrupt family, Alan stood as the undisputed sovereign of a thriving new civilization. He channeled his supreme power one final time, causing a giant glowing dome of protective energy to encircle the entire city oasis. The citizens looked up at the beautiful shimmering light, knowing they were forever safe under the watchful eye of their lord. Alan adjusted his fine, noble cloak, stepping forward to greet the future with absolute certainty in his heart. From a desolate patch of sand to an empire that would shake the foundations of the world, Babylon had finally risen. With his loyal followers by his side and boundless power at his command, Alan Gale's legendary journey had achieved its perfect final victory.